The archives of the young Soviet state hold secrets far darker than lists of political enemies. The true cost of victory in the Civil War was measured not only in the blood of the White Guards, but also in the lives of thousands of ordinary people torn apart in the maelstrom of criminal chaos. The great ideological experiment gave birth to a monster that its creators proved unable to control. The seed of this catastrophe was sown a few months before the arrival of the Bolsheviks. In March 1917, Alexander Kerensky, the head of the provisional government, signed a document that became, in fact, a death sentence for many innocent people. Official amnesty. The iron bars of the imperial prisons collapsed. More than 100,000 prisoners spilled onto the streets. And although history prefers to remember the political dissidents released that day, the grim truth of the police reports was different. The vast majority of Kerensky's chicks were inveterate repeat offenders, predators released into an ecosystem devoid of laws. The Soviet government that replaced Kerensky brought with it a frightening legal doctrine. The architects of the New World sincerely considered the educated classes to be their main enemy. But robbers, murderers, and robbers received a term in Soviet criminology that still makes modern historians' blood run cold: socially close. The top of the party, she naively believed that these cruel people were just victims of reactionary czarism. It is enough to remove their shackles, and they will gladly join the ranks of builders of a bright communist future. It was a fatal miscalculation. Wolves did not become shepherds. Accustomed to living off the blood of others, the marginals turned out to be completely immune to the ideology of creation. An epidemic of banditry has swept the country. Most of the criminal elements settled in megacities, where the chaos of the revolutionary period served as an ideal camouflage, and the prey was richer. However, the true, primal horror unfolded far from the cities. Among the hundreds of reports that landed on the desks of the investigators of the newly formed Moscow Criminal Investigation Department, MRU, one frightening pattern began to emerge: the handwriting of absolute, inhuman cruelty. A group that went down in history as the Kotov gang. Their weapon was not a revolver or a rifle, but a heavy peasant axe. No shots fired, no noise. Only methodical and ruthless extermination. More than 116 victims, not a single surviving witness. Analyzing the scale of the massacre, Moore's detectives assumed that they were dealing with an army of thugs. However, the forensic evidence pointed to a mathematical impossibility. The ghost army that terrorized entire provinces consisted of only 3 people, and one of them was a woman. Vasily Smirnov stood in the center of this bloody triangle. His real name, Kotov, was already a legend in the pre-revolutionary archives of the Smolensk province. A native of the village of Sukhodol, belonged to a real criminal dynasty. His father and older brothers did not get out of penal servitude. Vasily himself committed his first theft in 1896, at the age of 12, and the correctional system quickly became his only home. The revolution of 1918 tore him out of his cell, solemnly proclaiming him a victim of the Tsarist regime. At first, Kotov disguised his sadism as class revenge, ruthlessly slaughtering landowner estates. But when the nobility was destroyed as a class and their property nationalized, the mask fell off. Ideology has never mattered to him. The ideal predator simply changed its target and turned its gaze to ordinary peasants. His right-hand man was Ivan Morozov, a man whose brutality frightened even other criminals. By the time of his release, this physical giant had already served 15 years of hard labor for the murder of a government official. Morozov was a machine of destruction, who knew neither pity nor age restrictions for his victims. The third element of the group was 20-year-old Serafima Vinokurova, the daughter of a Kursk railway worker and Kotov's lover. She served as bait. The gang's methodology was based on the most ancient human weakness: mercy. In the dead of night, Serafima knocked on the doors of isolated village houses. A tearful girl, telling a chilling story about a robbery, begged to be allowed to spend the night. As soon as the heavy bolt was removed, Kotov and Morozov stepped out of the darkness. Entire families were wiped off the face of the earth. Sometimes they would change tactics and pay a visit in broad daylight. Presenting false mandates from Soviet commissars, they claimed to have conducted an official search. The result was always the same: dead owners and a looted house. For 2 years, they acted as invisible spirits of death. In the Moscow region alone, in Voskresensk and Naro-Fominsk counties, they left behind 30 corpses in 3 weeks. The region was gripped by massive paranoia. Villagers were terrified of spending the night in their huts. At dusk, the peasants herded their families into fortified farm buildings, where they sat until dawn with pitchforks and guns, preparing to repel the attack of ghosts with axes. The breakthrough in the investigation was due to a rare anomaly. 2 victims miraculously survived. The ghosts had faces. The large-scale hunt that began drove the gang out of the Smolensk province, forcing them to flee to the south. The ring narrowed only on the territory of Ukraine, in the city of Nizhin, Chernihiv province. A routine attempt to dispose of some of the blood-stained gold led to the collapse of their criminal empire. However, only Kotov and Vinokurova were handcuffed. The frost giant disappeared without a trace. The last dark secret of this story has been revealed in the interrogation room. It turned out that Kotov, a cold, blooded leader who had the blood of hundreds of people on his hands, eventually became horrified by his creation. Unable to control his progressive sadism anymore, Morozov, after the last case, he personally shot his monstrous partner. The trial was swift, and although the tribunal was able to officially prove the involvement of Kotov and Vinokurova only in the murder of 100 people, this was more than enough to reach the only possible verdict. For these socially close elements, the humanism of the young state ended at the firing squad.